The first positive commandment, this is HaYom Yom, these are words of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which the Rebbe gathered together and made it into a little booklet form called HaYom Yom. Today is the day. The first positive commandment is, in the language of the Maimonides, Rambam, the first commandment is to know that there is a first being that caused the existence of all. This is the first of the 10 commandments. No. That's right. The first of the 10 commandments, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. The first of the 10 commandments is a commandment. What's a commandment? It doesn't seem to be a commandment. It seems to be just a statement. But the fact of the matter is it is a commandment. And the commandment is to know that there is a first being that creates all existence. Okay, now just a small thing. When we say that there's a first being, we don't mean that there's a first being and that there's a second being. We don't mean that the first being and there's a second being and there's a third being and a fourth being. No. When we say that there's a first being, we mean that there's an only being. The only real existence is God. That's the only existence. And from God's existence as he creates other things. And this first being has to be present constantly in everything that he creates in order to make it exist. But nevertheless, God did create the world. He created the world in 5,784, whatever and a half years ago. What was there before that? There was nothing before that. There was no before. There was no before. When God created the world, he started before and after. Before that, there was no before. Spiritually, there was before, because God created. There was nothing. All of a sudden, there was something. So that's already Kabbalah deals with that, spiritual worlds and things like that. But as far as time, okay, but you have to know that there is a first being that caused the existence and who causes the existence of all existence. The knowledge of this is a positive commandment, like it says, I am God, your God, is a commandment. What are we supposed to do? What type of a commandment? You put on tefillin, you do something, you give charity, you do something. What are we supposed to do? It's a commandment relating to your mind. Every Jew believes already with the simple faith of God. You don't need your mind for that. Every Jew's heart is whole with God. So what do you have to have a commandment? It's a duty of the mind and the intellect to bring this faith and this certainty that God exists into a level of knowledge and comprehension, to understand it a little bit. That's the meaning of know that there is a first being. This commandment means comprehending. Know. You have to know, and da et Elokei avicha, like it says, know God is a God of your father, and serve him with a complete heart. Now, it's a very interesting thing because you cannot understand God. That's impossible to understand God. You can only understand things that you can define in your mind, somehow or other, right? You can define it in your mind. You can't, for instance, listen, I'm not a mathematician, but you can't use infinity in a normal mathematical condition. How much is 2 times infinity? What's infinity squared? What's the square root of infinity? It makes no sense, right? But nevertheless, there's such a thing as infinity, mathematical infinity. Here we're talking about not even spiritual infinity. Infinity is a creation of God. Infinity means that there's a limit and there's something above limit. God is above being above limit. God creates intellect. He creates awareness. Awareness is not God. God creates awareness. God creates intellect. God creates existence. What does this mean? It's incomprehensible, but it's a commandment to try to understand as much as possible. Because we see we exist and we believe we're created by God. So what's in the middle? A lot. And that's what we have to try to understand as much as possible. But when you understand this, you have to understand that basically you don't understand anything. It's a commandment, and you get excited about God creates me. He creates, see a beautiful sunset. You see miracles that God does. God helps people. God see a baby born. It's a miracle. I can't give birth to anybody. A woman can't give birth. God gives birth, right? God makes it that things give birth. It's an amazing thing. A flower blooms. It's a miracle. It's amazing. Right? It's fantastic. Sometimes you get artists It used to be a time when there was a thing in art, they try to bring out beauty. I don't know what they try to do nowadays, but you could look at a flower, see the beauty of a flower, see the beauty of a person, the beauty of a sunset, a beauty, see something beautiful, depth, meaning, love. You can feel those things are miracles, right? And the Romans and the Greeks, they used to worship those things. Where does love come from? Where does power come from? Where does victory come from? So, they thought they were gods, right? And they had good reason to think so, because you can't figure out where the source is. But nevertheless, that's called idolatry, because those things are a little bit, they're for yourself, they're for me. We're saying that God, the whole thing of God is that God is, he's creating me. And I should be for him. But in order to be for God, you have to understand. So the more you understand about godliness, the more you can serve him with a whole heart. And it is a commandment to do so. And that's the first of the 10 commandments. Now, story.